Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from alexmerced.com on why deficits matter. So what is a deficit? A deficit is the annual overspending, meaning basically took in, let's say $100, you spent $150, 50 is your deficit. Your debt is the sum of all your deficits in the past. So basically all the debt you've rung up from several years. But either way, the reason why the deficit matters is that when you spend more than you take in, you must borrow the money, which can have several different effects because you're borrowing from the same pool of money that everybody else borrows from, which means the cost of borrowing that money goes up, aka interest rates. Sometimes governments deal with this by printing more money because, hey, now there's more money to borrow, so the cost doesn't have to go up. But that can cause inflation as that money gets spent. And either way, what happens is that when you borrow and you increase interest rates, it costs more to start businesses, to borrow for a mortgage. And if you print the money and it causes inflation, it costs more of your paycheck to buy the thing. So overall, it has some sort of effect somewhere at some time. It may not happen right away, but deficits and debt do, especially at the government level, do play a long-term role if left unchecked. Now, this does not mean debt in your individual life is a bad thing. That can have a lot of beneficial effects for anyone to make investments like buying a house and starting a business if used wisely. My name is Alex Merced from alexmerced.com. Have a great day and enjoy. Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from alexmerced.com, and this is why cryptocurrency matters. So maybe you don't care that much about things like Bitcoin, Litecoin, and several of the other cryptocurrencies, but it does offer sort of a very important thing to the world. It offers a basically out-of-the-box payment infrastructure. So for countries like the United States, where we already have robust payment infrastructure, that may not seem like such a big deal. But for large parts of the developing world that doesn't have the infrastructure built out for payments as much as the US, cryptocurrency really offers sort of an out-of-the-box solution that allows them to leapfrog years of development. So that's a big factor, but also the fact of blockchain in general, the ability to kind of maintain public ledgers, which is great for public record keeping and any kind of information that you want transparent, public, and searchable, to be able to create a way that kind of retains integrity without having to have centralized control of information. This is a game changer because it eliminates a lot of the politics of gathering data and controlling data, and at the same time allows there to be much large networks and redundant networks of data that can really improve data sharing and gathering in the future as the technology develops. So cryptocurrency and blockchain have a lot to offer the world, even if it doesn't necessarily impact your life right now. Although it is pretty cool to kind of buy stuff once in a while with Bitcoin and Litecoin. So I do recommend just getting a little bit to play with. So although none of this is investment advice and any of that stuff, but just the value of the technology. My name is Alex Merced from alexmerced.com. Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from alexmerced.com. Talking about why I care about empathy, tolerance, and forgiveness so much. So while a purely, theoretically libertarian world is just a world based on consent, the idea that there is property rights that define what's yours and what is mine, and basically that we will not use violence on each other to control. I will not use violence on you to control what is yours, and you will not use violence on me to control what is mine. But for that world where we coexist as a society based on these kind of rules, we need to be able to coexist, and that's going to be based on our ability to forgive each other when we step on each other's toes, because that's inevitable. To be able to understand each other, meaning empathy, to be able to understand each other's context better, so even when we disagree, that we can at least appreciate where each other's coming from, and tolerance, so that way people can at least coexist amongst people's different and diverse social choices, social contexts, economic choices, economic contexts. Because without that, then what happens? We begin to divide each other. We begin to isolate ourselves from each other. We begin to resent each other, get angry with each other, and that's when the calls for violence and control begin. We start calling for controls on each other's property. So while libertarianism in its part is not about tolerance, empathy, and forgiveness, it's just about property rights and non-aggression. In order for a more libertarian world to persist once it exists, we should be promoting being or attempt in our own lives to be examples of empathy, tolerance, and forgiveness so that world can persist. At least from my perspective, that's my opinion. My name is Alex Merced from alexmerced.com. Have a great day and enjoy. Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from alexmerced.com, and I want to talk about why as a libertarian, I care a lot about leadership by example versus leadership by fear. So oftentimes when you're leading an organization, there's sort of two ways you can kind of get people to do what they need to do. You can inspire them by being really good at doing these things and being really focused on the mission and really believing in the mission and inspiring people to do what they need to do and be their best selves. In this situation, you end up spending less time having to keep an eye on everybody. You're going to get better results, and you end up with a lot more leaders because other people become inspirations to others. So you end up getting this great network effect and a lower cost because, again, you're not having to sit there and keep an eye and micromanage everybody. While vice versa, when you do it through fear, basically you have to have a credible threat of fear, which means you have to do mean things to people. And that means you have to keep an eye on them, because if they feel like you're not keeping an eye on them, they'll begin not listening to you because they're not doing it out of respect or admiration. They're doing it because they feel they're going to be punished if they don't. So it ends up costing you more over time, and eventually you fall apart because of it. It's much more expedient. It's much more faster. It's much easier to scare people into doing something. This is why it's used so much in politics versus to inspire them to do so. But if you want a libertarian world where people are more free as individuals and take on more responsibility themselves, you need to inspire them to do so. We'll never be able to scare people into taking responsibility. We have to inspire them to do so. This is why, particularly in the libertarian movement, leadership through example and inspiration is important. And to move away and shift away from the ideas of and focus of other political people as fear, we need to move away from. This is Alex Merced from alexmerced.com.